Yo, what's up guys? This is Oxy, and in this video I will give you a full walkthrough of the OxyOTT plugin. If you don't know what OTT is, it's basically a heavy multiband compression preset that's been used all over the place in EDM and other kinds of music. And the idea with the plugin was to take the character of that preset and retain as much of it as possible and to extend it with many new useful features. Some of them were requested a lot, like the linear phase crossovers. I'm just gonna list all the new features right here. So yeah, it's really like a big boy version of OTT, and in my opinion by far the best OTT effect you can get. I will go over all these features in a moment. If you want to try it for yourself, there is a free demo available. You can just download that and try for yourself. So starting off with the general layout, first of all we have like the spectrum view up here. Yeah, you can kind of see where like the stuff is in your signal, and then you can move the crossovers accordingly. Then you also have these right here. These are the output gains, so you can use these as some sort of EQ or general gain compensation for the compression. Then we have the 3 bands, so these are basically what you split up here with the crossovers. So this band right here goes into this compressor. Up here we got some general setup for each of them that determines how the bands are laid out. So you can disable them, so you can have 1 or 2 bands too. You can disable the whole processing of the band. You can mute or solo each band, and you can also go quite nuts with the internal and external sidechaining, so you can cross between the different bands. For example, make the mid band trigger the low band, and you can also have the same thing for like an external sidechain signal. And this is just to cue the sidechain if you need to listen to it. Then we got the compression transfer curve, and this is actually special because it's two-sided, so you have an upper and a lower threshold. Each of them has its own ratio, and you can make each of them compress or expand. In case of the lower threshold, compression would mean upwards compression, so the quiet signal gets louder, and expansion would mean downwards expansion or gating, so the quiet stuff gets completely faded out. This is actually extremely useful for drums. I can show that in a bit. For the upper one, it's more like your classic downwards compression like this. You can also do expansion, although this is probably the least useful of all 4 of them. And if, for example, you say you don't want the lower threshold to do anything, you can just set it to 1, and then you will just have downwards compression in this case. Then we got the compression ranges. You can see how it shows you how much it reduces, how much it gains. So in this case, we have upwards compression, downwards compression. So it reduces if it goes above this threshold, and it boosts if it is below this threshold. And for both of these, we can limit how much it can do. Then we got even more settings for each band. Most of these are actually scaled by some of these global ones that you can see all around. But you have the timings, attack, release, in-gain, Lookahead timing. For this you actually need to have the Lookahead switch on. The amount itself is just a scale for all the gains, so in-gain, out-gain, and the ratios. And you might know this parameter from the original OTT, which is the amount or also depth. It's basically the same thing but per band, and the global one scales the band ones. We also have these above and below scales, so these just scale all the upper ratios or all the lower ratios. And there's also a specialty about it. So for example, right now the upper ratios are all pretty high, and if you turn the above scale up, then these will actually fold back the signal. So I can just show that to you. Same thing goes for the below, so it can fold up. Then we got the time. This just scales all the attacks and releases. There's also a scale for all the attacks and all the releases. Really easy to dial that in. Next up, we got the crossover section. This is basically how steep each band gets filtered. So we have a 12 dB, 24 dB, and 48 dB per octave crossover. The default will be the 24. This is what the original has. But if you want like a more natural sound, you can also use the 12. can change how extreme you want the band split to be. You can also make the crossover linear phase. So if you don't know what linear phase is, normally you will have a phase shift that will move around the different frequency contents in your signal in relation to each other. So it kind of destroys the shape of your signal if you band split using that, and that can reduce your headroom, for example. Sometimes it can sound good, sometimes it will make it sound worse, and the phase shift will also cause the signal to cancel out a bit if you dry wet mix it. I can just show that to you. You hear how like all the highs get lost. And if I turn on linear phase, then that's completely gone. The linear phase mode is really just a more transparent crossover, and a lot of people have been requesting that for their OTT sound. So now you can have it, and the only trade-off here is really just a bit of latency and maybe some pre-winging depending on your signal, but you will hear that if it's a problem. And what's also worth noting is how efficient the linear phase filters are, because a lot of plugins will notice the moment you turn on the linear phase feature, the CPU usage will go up like 5 times, maybe 10 times. Also depends a bit on your buffer size maybe, but in OxyOTT it's really just a few percent, so you can really use this all over your project without having to worry about your CPU usage too much. Then we got the style section. What's mainly the point here is we have 3 different compression styles, and the first 2, sticky and punchy, they are basically what makes like the original character. Then RMS, basically another smoothing operation for the compression, so it makes it a bit softer. The timing changes are not as extreme. Softney will actually round off this transfer curve around the thresholds a bit, so it's more of a gradual threshold actually. And then we got the oversampling. This is also like a much requested feature. Basically makes it so the plugin internally runs at the higher sample rate. This will reduce aliasing from nonlinear processing like the compression or the clipper that I will go over in a minute. Then we got the mix. This is actually not doing what, for example, this mix knob right here would do. This is doing the mix per band, so it even works without the phase cancellation if linear phase is off. Then we got the Lookahead. This is just a global switch to enable these lookaheads down here. Instead of using these, you can also set like a minimum time here. So if I set this to 10 milliseconds, then the lookahead will be 10 milliseconds on all bands at the minimum. So if I have this on 5, it will still be 10. But I can also set this to like 14 specifically, then it will be 14 and the other ones will be 10. Then another big feature is the mid-side mode. If you turn it on, you will get these 2 tabs. All the stuff that's in the middle, so the band controls, they will actually be split as mid-side, so there's basically 2 instances of the same process going on, and you can change them independently, but you can also have this link params option enabled. So if I change this, you can see it changes right here too. Turn this off, now it doesn't link them. If you use like a lot of upwards compression, this will really turn up the sides. And you can kind of control that using this width knob right here. But you can also have the mid and side mixed independently. Now it sounds quite nice if you ask me. Then another cool feature is the clipper down here. If you don't want to blow out ears, you can also turn up this run-to-run thing, then it will turn down the outgain by the same amount. And this curved knob is basically a soft clipper switch. This is really useful if you have transients and stuff sticking out, so you can just clip them off by a few dB and you basically won't hear it. Alright, so now we're in the project file for our track Resonate that released on Exobolt 10. And in this track I used the OxyOTT quite a bit. First I want to show you how I used it on the master. I used this Fat EDM Master 2 preset, slightly modified. It has linear phase on, amount quite low. I'm just gonna play the track and move this mix knob up and down so you can kind of hear how much it changes the sound. So I hope you could hear what it does. I think it makes it quite a bit fatter, really makes it sound mastered. We can also see what it does if we have the linear phase off, because it actually makes quite a difference. Can especially hear on the low end how it gets a lot boomier without the linear phase. In theory it would be fatter, but it also loses a bit of precision. Sounds kind of more washed out in the low end. There's no right or wrong here. In this case I preferred the linear phase option. Next up I want to show you how I used it on these dubstep basses you just heard. There's this preset, the bass filthy upwards, which is an extreme upwards compression preset, so it really boosts all the details. Can't go wrong with these settings on basses. Then we got the vocals from Resonate in a separate project.
Soaring higher, reaching for the sky. In this resonance we ascend as one. With every note we will ignite the passion to find our light.
In my opinion, the vocal sounds a lot more finished like this, a lot more dense. Then another thing I want to show you specifically is the gating feature, especially on drums. Really cleans up that noise. You can also boost the ratio right here. And if you don't like the crunchiness of it, of course you can turn up the timing. But then it will get a bit loose, so what you can do instead is turn on the Lookahead, so it kind of smoothes out the fast changes that create the crunch. That's really nice. Then another cool thing you can do using the external sidechain feature. Let's say you wanna master this drop from the Siberian pack. So if you just slap the OTT on it. Now what you can do is you can take the drums out of the master signal but still have the routing. Then you go in OxyOTT, select the channel as the external sidechain, and then you can use this little toggle right here, the sidechain through, and then it will be mixed into the output signal. And now you can dial back the amount, maybe a bit less extreme. Now you have like a compressed lead and whatnot signal, but the drums aren't getting compressed. Alright, so that was it for the video. Be sure to try that demo, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and see you in the next one.